This session will discuss the most important element in the quality and efficiency of Newton Homeopathics, Dr. Luc Chaltin, its founder. In addition to being an entrepreneur and the founder of Newton Homeopathics, Dr. Luc was a teacher, a healer, a scholar, and an author. He was an amazing man. Dr. Luc was born in Belgium in 1923. In 1938, at the early age of 15, Dr. Luc graduated from a 3-year horticultural school. He graduated third in his class, first and second place going to a 20-year-old and an 18-year-old. Soon after, he went to school again and at the age of 17 became a certified auto mechanic. Unbeknownst to him, with the knowledge of plants and mechanics, he was being prepared to develop a homeopathic manufacturing company. The war had already started, and when he turned 18, he chose to hide from the German army so that he would not be forced to work in their factories. It was during this time of hiding that he began to read incessantly, a habit continued throughout his life. The first Monday in September 1944 brought Dr. Luc a life-changing experience. The American and Canadian tanks rolled into his town, liberating it from the Germans. He said that ever since that day in 1944, he wanted to come to the United States. After the war, Dr. Luc became an engineer and was sent by his employer to the Congo in Africa. He took his young family with him and eventually would father a total of 10 children. For 6 years, he was in charge of building factories there, but then became very ill with malaria and other ailments and was forced to return to Belgium. After returning to Belgium in 1950, he continued to suffer from ill health until 1959 when he was first introduced to homeopathy by a friend. His first experience with homeopathy was a positive response for his stomach issues. Then in 1965, he was diagnosed with tuberculosis by an allopathic doctor, but he could not tolerate the medications he prescribed. Because he had experienced success with homeopathy, he sought out a homeopath to cure him of tuberculosis. The first homeopath prescribed, Nux vomica 200C, had no results. He then went to a famous homeopath in France who laughed at him and said, "You can't cure tuberculosis with homeopathy." He was on his own. In his quest, he found the written works of Le Prince and Veneer, which would save his life. Le Prince wrote concerning the importance of drainage or liver detoxification. Veneer wrote a book about curing tuberculosis with homeopathy called How to Cure Tuberculosis with Homeopathy. It was in French, but of course Luc, like many Europeans, spoke several languages and French was one of them. Using these concepts, Dr. Luc healed himself of tuberculosis in 6 months. He continued to go back to his allopathic doctor for monitoring, but each time he was given a prescription, he threw it away and continued his homeopathy until the doctor said there was no sign of tuberculosis. After healing his tuberculosis using homeopathy, he made the connection between the clinical approach he used for his tuberculosis and using the same approach for all chronic disease. Dr. Luc went on to heal his chronic digestive issues as well as residual side effects that he suffered as a result of childhood vaccination. Of course, after healing himself, he became in high demand as a healer in his community. In time, Dr. Luc switched from being an engineer to being a homeopath and treated thousands of patients while living in Europe. He wrote several books in Dutch discussing his passion for the practice of homeopathy, including a 300-page book titled Guide to Homeopathy. In addition, he wrote several smaller books such as Homeopathic Medicine Chest and Advice for a Healthy Diet. As Dr. Luc educated himself on homeopathy, he also became interested in other aspects of natural healing, especially the importance of a clean, balanced diet. In 1970, he was introduced to organic gardening and became a member of the Swiss Biological Farmer Organization. He wrote the first book on organic gardening in Dutch, Horticulture for Lovers, and Guide for Organic Horticulture, and he hosted an organic gardening radio show. In 1982, Dr. Luc realized his lifelong dream of coming to America. Even though he spoke several languages, Dutch, which is his native tongue, German, French, and Swiss German, he did not speak English but took English as a second language when he moved to America. In 1987, the same year he started Newton Homeopathics, Dr. Luc proudly became a permanent resident and in 1992 became a naturalized citizen. At the age of 64, when most people were thinking of retirement, Dr. Luc started Newton Homeopathics in an empty room in his apartment. He did not let his age or the fact that he did not speak English deter him. As he built a following, in 1991 he bought a home, petitioned for a change in the zoning, and moved his lab to the basement of his home. As Newton continued to grow, Dr. Luc moved his laboratory again. In 1995, Dr. Luc built a new, larger facility on several acres of land. It was clearly designed with an engineer's eye and surrounded by trees with a nature lover's appeal. Over the next years, Dr. Luc continued to help people heal using homeopathy. He wrote a book entitled Homeopathy for First Aid and Common Ailments, which highlighted single remedies, and he developed a correspondence course on clinical homeopathy. He co-hosted a radio show, Jumpstart Your Health, and on many occasions presented lectures, wrote for professional publications, and treated patients. He passionately promoted homeopathy at every opportunity. As Dr. Luc reached his early 80s, he entrusted Newton Homeopathics to Marge Roberts in 2004. Since 1996, Dr. Luc and Newton had been advocates for the Complementary Alternative Medical Association, an educational association co-founded by Marge. He had served on its board of directors and lectured on many occasions. In 2008, at the age of 85, Dr. Luc passed away from complications from an accident he suffered while on his daily nature walk. Still in good health, on no medications, and reading books such as Bacteria and Viruses and the History of Music, he left this world vibrant and loved and never to be forgotten.